Why does Yusuke suck so much? So, I've been watching Yu Yu Hakusho, and I've made it up to the end of the Dark Tournament so far. The show is compelling enough to get me to keep watching it, and I do always want to see how the next fight is going to play out, since they can get very creative. But the thing is, none of this applies to Yusuke himself. His design is simple but memorable, and his personality makes him very endearing, as we see him outgrow his too cool to care attitude he starts with as he gradually matures and learns to care for those around him. But when it comes to the actual battles, I always hope that Yusuke isn't the one fighting them. Kuwabara, Hiei, and Kurama are all more interesting fighters, and they're involved in battles that get a lot more tense than anything Yusuke's in. Kuwabara is in tune with the spiritual realm, but by itself this doesn't do him much good. His first ability is found when he ends up taking a piece of a blessed bamboo sword and mends it by using his own spiritual energy to make it a complete sword to fight with. Then this is expanded on when he discovers that he can create the blade out of thin air without a sword handle to help him. He shows that he can also extend the sword, and then uses this in a fight by extending it through 4 dogs, which he then leads around a pillar and locks them in place. He also uses the extension power to turn his sword into a pole vault, and to break his falls. This is an effective way to build on an ability. It's introduced and then slowly improved and iterated on, becoming useful for more than just fighting. In the finals of the Dark Tournament, he gets a different sword handle as a callback to the first time he summoned the sword, and it's a pretty cool moment. This handle helps him channel his power and create an even stronger sword than usual, while also partially shielding him. He also learns to make his sword move at will in any direction, once again, adding more use cases for his power. He does get some random power-ups because of Yukina, which aren't great, but considering Yusuke's random power-ups, they're really not that bad. Hiei is a cocky character who has great power and always tries to finish fights in one hit by striking at the right moment. He never gets boring though, because his moves are always insanely cool. In his fight against Seiryu, after dodging several ice attacks while running around the room, Hiei reveals his power by instantly slicing him 16 times before he can even react, leading to a type of scene that I always love, when the bad guy acts cocky before realizing that he's already lost and didn't even notice. In the manga, this entire fight actually takes place in a single page. He seems even cooler in a conversation after the fight, where when asked how many times he sliced Seiryu and answering 16, Yusuke gets bummed out since he only counted 14 slashes. The next big fight we see Hiei in is handled similarly, and after we see Zeru show off his fire powers, Hiei shows off his and incinerates him with nothing but his right arm by using the flames from the demon realm, but he does lose his arm in the process. His next 2 fights in the tournament happen consecutively. He wins the first in a second by cutting up his opponent right as the fight starts, and when his cockiness lands him in a tough spot in the second fight, he copies Kuwabara's spirit sword by completing his broken katana with demon flames to cut up his opponent. His final fight is against Bui, a foe who seems impossibly strong, causing Hiei to break out his perfected Dark Flame Dragon in one of the coolest scenes I've ever seen. It gets deflected back at him, he absorbs its power, and becomes so strong that Bui can't even make him flinch with his full power. He easily knocks him away before falling asleep. He seems overpowered at first, but most of his attacks come with severe drawbacks, and he's kept in check by his respect for the other members of the team, so he has no problem taking a backseat and letting the others show off in fights too. Kurama has perfect progression in his abilities and fighting styles, and is probably the most interesting character because of it. At first, we see him turn a rose into a whip and fill the room with petals so that he can smell the enemy to figure out the direction they're attacking from. The rose whip is his primary weapon, and he uses this in most fights. We later see that he can also use petals as ranged weapons by scattering them around the enemy and sharpening them to cut his opponent from all sides. In the Dark Tournament, in a fight when he loses the use of his arms and legs, he then starts using his hair to control the whip. After this, Kurama grows a plant inside of his opponent to immobilize them, and then this idea gets built on by having him grow a plant inside of his own body in a later fight as his last resort to win. After gaining access to his demon form, he gains the ability to grow plants from the demon realm, which are similar to human plants but far more aggressive, a concept which doesn't feel cheap since we already know that the demon realm has the fire that Hiei can summon. So it's cool to see that the demon realm has other parallels to the human world too. Finally, everything Kurama has done leads up to this incredible fight with Karasu, where he uses every single trick he's learned so far to win. He tries to use the whip and the ranged petal blades, but they both fail. He just explodes them easily. Then he fakes out his opponent by making Karasu think that he was trying to plant a seed inside him, but just makes him bleed. And he wins by growing a plant inside of his own body again, but this time he's ready to give up his life to be able to grow a demon plant while in his human form, something which he can't usually do because of the strain caused. This is the culmination of everything he's done so far, and this was by far my favorite fight in the tournament. Everything gets used, and it is just an incredible fight. And then we have Yusuke, the main character who has main character tier powers and luck and wins every fight no matter how outmatched he is, to the point where you don't even have to worry or even wonder if there's going to be a problem for a single second. That's not really a problem in and of itself, but Yusuke is by far the most boring member of his squad. Every fight he's in, he gets hit a million times, keeps getting back up somehow, and then wins by either completely random luck or by landing a single hit on his opponent with his one move, the In the Genkai tournament alone, he wins one battle by landing a single hit on an enemy multiple times his size, who by no means should have been knocked out with a single shot. When this happened, I was waiting for the guy to get back up and the fight to continue, but no, he just wins after taking a massive beating. In another fight in the same tournament, he wins by accidentally falling into a puddle while the enemy's heat-seeking shurikens are targeting him, and they just kind of explode on his opponent instead, because for some reason they don't follow him into the puddle that he fell in. So he won that fight by doing absolutely nothing. The final fight in this tournament, he wins by accidentally getting pawn scum stuck in his ear. So his opponent reads out an incantation to make him shrink, but because he can't hear because of the grass in his ear, his opponent shrinks himself, and he wins. He does nothing. In this tournament, he had 3 fights, and 2 of them were won by factors completely outside of his control. They're trying to set Yusuke up to be a cool main character, but he doesn't actually put any work in. All of these were very lame. In the Maze Castle fight against Suzaku, Yusuke should have lost completely. But he taps into that oh-so-common power in shonens where a main character can be as strong as he wants at the nebulous cost of some of his life force, a concept which is never explained and whose effects are not something you'll ever actually have to worry about in the show. If they're gonna have any drawback at all, it's gonna be like far after the show is done, so who gives a shit. At least when Kurama wanted to create a demon plant, he was ready to die for it. He ends up not dying because his demon power is flowing back into his human form, which is kind of a cop-out, but at the very least, he's ready to die. Yusuke just kind of pulls power out of nowhere and then wins. In the Dark Tournament itself, every fight Yusuke has is also won after he uses up all of his power, and then just pulls out some more power and lands a super finishing blow. In his fight against Jin, which he wins by using something resembling a dragon punch, it's later revealed that the punch was actually just a way to shoot his gun at point blank range, so he doesn't even have a way to power up his fists, it's just his gun. Again. The only times that Yusuke did something interesting up to this point in the show were in the first fight against the Toguro brothers, where he used his gun to speed up Kuwabara's stab to win the fight, and in his fight against Chu, which eventually devolves into a close quarters fist fight, which he wins with a headbutt. Also, it's called the
Knife edge deathmatch. Knife edge deathmatch. Knife edge deathmatch. Knife edge deathmatch.
Knife edge deathmatch.
which is just the absolutely fucking coolest name for a one-on-one duel ever. Even in his massive final fight with Toguro, which everything in the show leads up to, plays out with him firing 3 shots that do absolutely nothing, and then one final which is powered up enough because he's mad and so he wins the fight. It's predictable and it's boring. Yu Yu Hakusho is still a great show and I am excited to keep watching it, but it's really not a great sign when I'm hoping that for every new fight that happens, the main character isn't the one fighting it. At least the story's pretty good about including every character in fights, and it never feels like any of them are being snubbed or forgotten about.
I get extra happy every time I see my waifu. Yeah, she is okay, but she is nothing like my waifu. Maybe one day I could get married to my waifu. I don't care what you say, nigga. Damn, I love my waifu. 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 She ain't nothing like you. She don't bitch and egg me all the time up on her cycle. Damn, I love my waifu. Her figure is so curvy. When you stand by my waifu, I can tell that you're not worthy. My waifu is so kawaii, and plus she got big boobies. Poor Chen thinks that she's their waifu, but I said, what's up, Muji? I do this for otaku. Shigeru Miyamoto. I'm in Electric City with my waifu playing Toho. I get extra happy every time I see my waifu. Yeah, she is okay, but she is nothing like my waifu. Maybe one day I could get married to my waifu. I don't care what you say, nigga, damn, I love